Welcome, everyone, to session number 20.
30.
Session number 30.
Yes. Last time we talked about something we had mentioned the previous time about using an interaction with nature, a walk in nature, for example, to connect with our higher self, a form of meditation. And we used the analogy of a story that Eckhart Tolle told in his book, A New Earth. But I want to reemphasize that because it is so perfect. And so let's hear it from the horse's mouth. So I'm going to have Paul read the actual story from the book. Can you hear that mountain stream?
This is on page 236 of A New Earth. Can you hear the mountain stream? A Zen master was walking in silence with one of his disciples along a mountain trail. When they came to an ancient cedar tree, they sat down under it for a simple meal of some rice and vegetables. After the meal, the disciple, a young monk who had not yet found the key to the mystery of Zen, broke the silence by asking the master, "Master, how do I enter Zen?" He was, of course, inquiring how to enter the state of consciousness, which is Zen. The master remained silent. Almost 5 minutes passed, while the disciple anxiously waited for an answer. He was about to ask another question when the master suddenly spoke. "Do you hear the sound of that mountain stream?" The disciple had not been aware of any mountain stream. He had been too busy thinking about the meaning of Zen. Now, as he began to listen for the sound, his noisy mind subsided. At first, he heard nothing. Then his thinking mind gave way to heightened alertness, and suddenly he did hear the hardly perceptible murmur of a small stream in the far distance. "Yes, I can hear it now," he said. The master raised his finger and, with a look in his eyes that in some way was both fierce and gentle, said, "Enter Zen from there." The disciple was stunned. It was his first satori, a flash of enlightenment. He knew what Zen was without knowing what it was that he knew. They continued on their journey in silence. The disciple was amazed at the aliveness of the world around him. He experienced everything as if for the first time. Gradually, however, he started thinking again. The alert stillness became covered up again by mental noise, and before long he had another question. "Master," he said, "I've been thinking. What would you have said if I hadn't been able to hear the mountain stream?" The master stopped, looked at him, raised his finger, and said, "Enter Zen from there." So good.
So profound,
So good.
in so
Yes.
many, in so few words.
Yes.
He absolutely told the essence of how we contact our higher self in meditation. Whatever you can achieve, whether it's tiny, whether it's great, that's where you start. Start from there. So, Amal, when you felt a sense of peace, enter Zen from there. That's the starting point. We each have a different starting point. Now I'm going to play a word association game with you. When I say Zen, what do you think of?
Meditative pose, an old man with a beard, maybe, some type of Buddhism, perhaps.
A state of mind, an ability, really.
Most people would have an image, though, in their mind, I would imagine.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they would associate it with the consciousness of it.
All right, the next word is Dzyan.
Spell that.
The stanzas of Dzyan.
Me personally?
D-Z-Y-A-N. What does it conjure up for you?
Well, me personally, Helena Blavatsky, the profound teachings in The Secret Doctrine, a secret body of knowledge.
And when I say Dhyan Chohan, what do you think of?
Highly evolved spiritual masters.
And when I say Dhyana, what do you think of?
Meditation, focus of the mind, calmness of thought.
And now, when you combine all four of those, what do you get?
in theory or in practice?
Well, I'm pointing out each one of those is connected. Zen, Dzyan,
The actual words of, yes.
they all connote this state of mind that elevates us, that helps us along the path. In fact, it's a requirement. If you are unable to contact your higher self, you will not be able to progress. It's that simple.
You're right. All those words do have common common
derivation. Zen, Dzyan, Dhyana, they all
Yeah, that's
come
true.
from the same, probably Senzar word. I'm assuming, the stanzas of Dzyan.
Well,
so that comes from
How
Senzar.
about D, Buddhi? There's
Right.
Buddhi is a compound word. DHI refers to the higher self, and then Dharana, the precursor to Dhyana, those all have that d sound at the beginning.
Yes. So that's the sort of association we can make in our minds.
Higher self.
When you study one thing, maybe Zen, we study the stanzas of Dzyan.
Yes.
We're studying the same thing. We're all talking about the same thing.
The reason why the word Zen we don't typically see it with a D in front of it, you may know, transliteration is subjective. When you transliterate sounds or words from one language to another, they can be spelled in various ways. DZ might be the same sound as just Z,
Right.
Zen. So
You put 4 people on probation. Now, it appears to me that none of them realized that they were on probation. So that tells me something. You may be on probation and not know it.
let's clarify what that means. It's not a bad thing. It's not like you're in trouble.
Yes, good idea.
It's actually the opposite of that.
Exactly. So what does it mean?
It's the opposite. You're actually being interviewed for a big old job. Well, it's being interviewed for your spiritual life, basically, your spiritual chelaship. To be a student of the masters. They're looking at you. They're considering you for tutelage.
Now, we've pointed out that it depends on you. If you mentally raise your hand and say, I want to be one of those chelas, apparently, from what I can tell, they have to test you. They have to give you that opportunity, even if they know you're not ready for it.
Really?
Because it would make sense, because otherwise that person is going to be resentful. Well, why didn't they give me a chance at least? Hume, for example, is positive that he's the perfect candidate for chelaship.
So everyone who does volunteer,
They will test them.
but
They will give them opportunities, and not just one or two. It goes on for a period of time, and it's different for each one.
we said earlier that we may not know that we're on probation.
Yes.
But at some point, everyone who's being tested will know.
They might recognize after the fact. They might not ever recognize it. They might just say, wow, I went through a period where I had so many troubles and so many trials in my life and not connected to.
You mentioned that if they're not tested, they might be resentful, but if they don't necessarily know they're being tested anyway, that's an interesting point. And that's what I think that holds a clue there, that every one of us on earth, whether we're on this path now or not, if you're going through trials and tribulations in life, you may be being tested. This is interesting to think about. Try to figure out the connections for things, and we don't have to know the exact reasons, but we may be on a path towards.
And the
chelaship.
biggest test is whether or not you have intuition, whether or not you can contact Buddhi, your higher self, enough that you can recognize that. That's the first test. Can you even recognize it? So who are the 4 that were put on probation? A.P. Sinnett, C.C. Massey, and we've only heard a couple of references to him. Remember, he was the one that had several illegitimate brats. Hume, Mr. Hume, and Edmund Fern.
We haven't heard that name yet.
We have, but only in passing. Edmund Fern was a young man living with Hume and working as a personal assistant secretary for him. And he apparently had been educated by the Jesuits. And he was somewhat psychic, somewhat clairvoyant, and he also wanted to get in touch with the masters, so they gave him an opportunity. He, will learn later, actually did receive letters and in some ways made more progress than the others.
Wow.
Of course, Sinnett and Hume have been receiving letters too. C.C. Massey, I've never heard of any letters that were written to him, but there may be some.
Was he an Englishman also?
Yes, he was I believe, a barrister, an
Barista?
attorney.
Oh, not a barista, a barista.
Not that, no. A different bar he worked at, or before the bar. So he was also a spiritualist. He was an early member of the Theosophical Society and participated quite regularly with the society. And so all four of them, apparently without their knowing it, had been placed on probation. And later we'll see how each one does. Another thing K.H. pointed out was each warmer and quicker throb of the heart wears so much of life away. Emotions wear us out, deplete our energy, diminish our immune system. They shorten our life. And this is one of the ways that the Mahatmas lengthened their lives. Almost zero emotions. If they do have an emotion, they shut it down immediately because they have that control. And that extends their life. Some of the people who live the longest are the ones who live slowly. They frustrate people like you and I who are A-type personalities. They don't drive fast enough. They don't move fast enough. They don't make decisions fast enough. But guess what? They live with less stress in their lives, and they live longer. Just look around you and notice the people who live the longest. And not always. It's not always that case. Sometimes A personalities live a long time. But generally, we die from heart attacks and things like that. So first things to eliminate are the gross emotions: greed, fear, anger, hatred, selfishness, and even ambition, unless it is completely unselfish. Then, once you've got all of those under control, alcohol. Give up your meat diet. If you want connection with the Mahatmas, we learned that K.H. couldn't even go to the headquarters in Bombay because there were people there who were meat eaters, and he could not tolerate those vibrations. And sexual desires is pretty much the last one that you have to deal with. So if you're worrying about those, take care of all of the others first. Number one, for most people, is ego. But all the others too: greed, anger, fear. And then other things that were recommended in the article: pure air, pure water, pure food, gentle exercise, regular hours, a pleasant occupation, and pleasant surroundings. All of these are helpful in progress. The gross materials and desires become repulsive as you work and become more and more purified. They fall away. It's not a matter of killing them out. It's a matter of starving them until there's nothing within you that finds any pleasure or interest in them. They just become uninteresting. One of the things Jesus said in the Bible was, "Except ye become as a little child, ye cannot enter into the kingdom of God." And this is describing this becoming pure as a child without these desires that most adults have, that we fixate on during so much of our adult life. As children, they are purer. They are more connected with the spiritual self than we are as 40-year-olds, for the most part. And the kingdom of God, whenever Jesus talks about the kingdom of God, he's talking about the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy. That is the kingdom of God. So if you want to study the Bible and try to figure out the esoteric parts of it, that is the key. The kingdom of God is the Mahatmas, their chelas, and the Bodhisattvas, Buddhas, and Dhyan Chohans, the entire gamut. That is the kingdom of God. He talked about a fugitive running from being captured and how you have to discard things if you're going to succeed in not being captured. And he said, death is the same way. If we get rid of all these things that death can latch onto, then it has no hold on you, can't grab you. And so when the time comes that your body normally would die, it doesn't happen. Whether or not that's true, I don't have personal experience
That seems to make
decide.
sense, though. That seems to make sense, though.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
And when you think about the adepts and how long they can live, then it makes perfect sense. We also talked about how to die before you die is the key to eternal life. So if you want to have this continuous consciousness that the Mahatmas have and those above them, that's how you do it. You have to let go of your attachment to the material world, to your emotions, and to all desire to exist in this personality. Your focus has to be on your higher self. That has to have the greatest amount of control. As long as your higher self is in control of your life, you have attained eternal life because there is no break in consciousness.
I'll play the devil's advocate for just 1 second with that. Yes, and we were also mentioning earlier that we can't have too much desire to connect with our higher self. Some people, we have friends that we can probably name more than we have fingers for, that cannot wait to finish this life because they're convinced that they're not going to need to come back and life is too hard and they can't wait to get rid of this body and be done. That's not good either.
No, and that's still attachment.
Yeah.
That's still attachment to the lower part because you hate it. Exactly. Hatred is also attachment.
It binds you to the thing you hate. Just like attraction that you want it binds you to what you want. Repulsion binds you to it too. Isn't that's pretty crazy?
A conundrum, yeah. So, disinterest.
Right.
Have equanimity. That's the goal. Disinterest, equanimity, vairagya.
Vairagya. The word disinterest is good, and that might conjure the idea of we're cold and non-caring, so it's not that either. It's not that we're not interested. We are. It's just we're not grasping. I think that's what Eckhart, grasping or reaching or wanting so bad. That's what we want to work on reducing.
Disinterest and uninterested are two different things. Disinterested doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you don't have a preference one way or the other.
Ah, okay. Thank you. That's good. That's very good.
We have, yet again, a special segment of... we always have them, don't we? Quite awesome. Anyway, we talked about this in a previous episode about the very last KH letter, or Mahatma letter, I should say. The first letter that we know of was in 1870, delivered by Moria, apparently, to HPB's aunt in Odessa. The very last letter was delivered by the post office to Annie Besant in 1900. So there was a person in India who was interested in theosophy, but he was concerned because he didn't understand parts of what was being taught in 1900. And this is the letter that he wrote from Bombay on August 22nd, 1900, to Annie Besant, who at the time, although she lived quite often or most of the time in India, she also spent a lot of time in London. So she was in London at the time. Dear Madam, I have long wished to see you, but somehow I have been so confused by many things I heard from several members of the Theosophical Society that I really do not understand what are really the tenets and beliefs of the society. What form of yoga do you recommend? I have been interested in yoga studies, and I send you the Pancharatna Gita by Anandan Bai, who is much advanced in this science. I wish you could see her. I am going to Kolhapur, but have to come back soon and pay my respects to you when you come back to India. Yours respectfully, B.W. Mantri. Now, we're including this letter. That was the letter from either a theosophist or someone who is interested in joining the society.
B.W. Mantri.
Yes. And he was very interested in different schools of yoga. He's like, what school of yoga do you teach? Because he was confused based on the books and teachings that he read. And so this is the last letter that we have from KH. Now, HPB died in 1891 in May. And when she died, she had made no provisions for a successor because none of her students had direct communications with either of the Mahatmas. So all of the teachings came through HPB, then they were distributed to W.Q. Judge in America as her agent in America, and she distributed them in Europe, and Olcott apparently distributed them in Asia.
I'm surprised that KH or Moria didn't suggest to her to appoint someone else.
They would have to have made the effort, and
There wasn't anybody.
there wasn't anybody. No one had good, reliable communication with the Mahatmas. So after she died, HPB, the members were adrift. They were like, what do we do? What do we do? There was a struggle, sort of, between Annie Besant and W.Q. Judge as to who would take over the head of the esoteric section. It was called the esoteric section at first. And they each thought that they should be the one to take charge. And then just before or during a meeting that they were having with some of the esoteric school members, a piece of paper fell out of a stack of papers that Annie Besant had, and on it, it said, apparently, in Moria's handwriting, Judge's plan is right. Well, the plan that he proposed was let's both be outer heads, as they were called. So HBB was called the outer head of the esoteric section or esoteric school, because the Mahatmas, whether it was Moria or KH, was the inner head on the inner planes. The outer one was the one who had communication, direct communication with him.
And the esoteric school is, we should explain quickly what that is.
Well, it's
or the exoteric section.
it is an inner society within a society. They claim that it's completely separate, but that's not completely true. I'll not say too much about that, but in theory, that's the way it works. In practice, not so much. So the main thing is that no one had received reliable communications for 9 years. And all of a sudden, we get this letter from KH, and it's very much in his style, except that he's taking on more of a Moria attitude. He's not real happy. And at the same time, he's giving us confirmation of some of the requirements that we covered in our last session. Those requirements that are absolutely essential to become an accepted chela. And so let's go ahead, and I'm going to have Paul read most of this, but there's a twist to this. The letter was not disclosed to the public until 1919 when it was published in a book. And there were certain parts of it that were redacted, taken out, and just shown by ellipses. And the reasons given was that it pertained to Annie Besant's personal spiritual development. And in a way it did, so in one sense. But it's very important for us as aspirants that we know what that is. So eventually it was released to the public, and we have the whole thing now.
Were these other letters published back then?
Numerous letters, but they weren't published in a book. They were distributed in the Theosophist and in others.
Good. Okay.
And whether or not this was distributed in the Theosophist magazine, I don't know, but as a book, the first time was in 1919.
Okay.
So I'm going to have Paul read the main part of the letter, and whenever it comes to a part that was redacted, I'm going to read that part.
What does the first letter, how does that relate to this, though? The letter from the chela, or the interested party?
He's going to re-emphasize some of the things that are absolutely essential that we have to
eliminate
in our lives if we want to have reliable contact with the
this letter?
Mahatmas. Oh, this one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
This is the person who wrote and said, I'm confused. I'm very confused. And he's going to say why he was confused.
Oh, KH will say why he was confused. Oh, okay. That's the relationship. I just wasn't sure.
This man in India wrote a letter to Annie Besant saying, I'm confused. What do you actually teach? Mm-hmm. And KH is saying, this is why he's confused.
Okay. So this is what this looks like? Is this a
photo?
No,
we will put in links to the actual letters, but they aren't very well copied photographically. It's actually on theosophy.wiki. This is a typed manuscript that someone made years ago, and it's easier to read from. But we'll give you the link to the actual letter, the photo of them, and.
Was it handwritten, or we don't
know?
Yeah,
it was handwritten, mm-hmm. And also to this one too.
Okay.
So this is the last letter written in 1900, received 9 years after the death of H.P. Blavatsky.
To Annie Besant. A psychic and a pranayamist who has got confused by the vagaries of the members. Now, is he talking about her or this gentleman?
He's talking about the teachings in theosophy, whether it's the ones by Annie Besant or whether it's by other theosophists. He's interested in theosophy, but he's terribly confused by what is being...
But KH is referring to this gentleman here.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. And
Absolutely.
he's calling him a psychic and a pranayamist.
Yes.
Oh, okay. The TS and its members are slowly manufacturing a creed. Says a Tibetan proverb, credulity breeds credulity and ends in hypocrisy. How few are they who can know anything about us? Are we to be propitiated and made idols of?
And then this was excised. Is the worship of a new trinity made up of the blessed M, Upasika, who is HPB, and yourself to take the place of exploded creeds? We ask not for the worship of ourselves. The disciples should in no way be fettered. Beware of esoteric popery, as in making a pope out of somebody.
Wow. And that was omitted from the published letter. And then it continues. The intense desire of some to see Upasika reincarnate at once has raised a misleading Mayavic ideation, and Mayavic refers to illusion. Upasika has useful work to do on higher planes and cannot come again so soon.
All right, now what he's referring to here is that Annie Besant had a Brahmin teacher in India who claimed to be in touch with the Mahatmas. His name was G. something Chakravarti. And he was only vaguely associated with the Theosophical Society. But he claimed to have communications with them. He also had a daughter who was about 8 years old. And he claimed that she was the reincarnation of HPB. And Annie Besant, trusting him that he knew what he was talking about, was firmly convinced that that was the case. And what did KH say?
The TS must safely be ushered into the new century.
And he said, HPB cannot return again so soon. She has other work to do. And now here's another omitted section. You have for some time been under deluding influences. Shun pride, vanity, and love of power. Be not guided by emotion, but learn to stand alone. Be accurate and critical rather than credulous. Credulous meaning gullible. The mistakes of the past in the old religions need not be glossed over with imaginary explanations. Now, both Annie Besant and Leadbeater at this point were yearning to make Christianity conform to esoteric principles. They both had really strong ties to the Church of England. And so they both were trying to figure out a way to make Christianity and theosophy compatible, but from the exoteric point of view. So they were already thinking about the possibility of a Messiah who would come and would explain how they could merge or be different and yet the same. So that's what he's referring to in these imaginary explanations. The EST, esoteric section or esoteric school of theosophy, must be reformed so as to be as unsectarian and creedless as the TS. The rules must be few and simple and acceptable to all. Now, here's the interesting thing. Annie Besant and Judge had decided that they were going to be jointly the outer heads of the esoteric school. Him in America, her in the rest of the world. So for several years, actually only for 4 years, because W.Q. Judge died in 1895. He had very poor health his entire life, and there were huge problems between him and Annie Besant and Olcott. There's an entire book that thick about the whole period of that time. And he died in 1895, so that was the end of that, except that his theosophical group continued after that and still exists in some ways today. So also, Annie Besant was the only outer head of the ES after Judge died as far as the TS in Adyar. So in 1898, she closed it down. The esoteric school was closed down completely. All the membership was rescinded. They all had to send back all of the papers that they had received, including the ones that HPB had sent to them when she was still alive. All of that came back to headquarters. And then a year later, Annie Besant restarted the ES on a different footing, very different. The rules were different. Everything was different. And everyone had to reapply to be a member. And I believe that they received their papers back if they were readmitted, but the ones who chose not to reapply or who were rejected wouldn't have received them. So let's continue with the part that was excised. The EST must be reformed so as to be as unsectarian and creedless as the TS. The rules must be few and simple and acceptable to all.
No one has a right to claim authority over a pupil or his conscience. Ask him not what he believes.
And then again, this was excised. All who are sincere and pure-minded must have admittance. Now, I don't know why that would have been excised, but it was.
Well, probably to the esoteric section.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
that's what it was referring to, was to the EST.
They don't let just anyone in, isn't that?
No, so apparently he was not in agreement with the rules that were in force at the time.
The crest wave of intellectual advancement must be taken hold of and guided into spirituality. It cannot be forced into beliefs and emotional worship. The essence of the higher thoughts of the members in their collectivity must guide all action in the TS
and ES.
That was removed.
That was removed. And ES.
We never tried to subject to ourselves the will of another. At favorable times, we let loose elevating influences which strike various persons in various ways.
Now, this is extremely important. This could be a Shaktipat for a particular individual, or it could be a group Shaktipat, so to speak. They let loose influences to try to influence certain individuals.
Yeah. Exactly. They send
So
energy.
he says, at favorable times, we let loose elevating influences which strike various persons in various ways.
Right. It's a receipt of a gift. Yeah. It is the collective aspect of many such thoughts that can give the correct note of action. Interesting. We show no favors. The best corrective of error is an honest and open-minded examination of all facts, subjective and objective.
Repeat that again.
The best corrective of error is an honest and open-minded examination of all facts, subjective and objective. People don't want to do that.
Well, complete, total honesty
Right.
and disinterest. Not twisting things to suit someone's purposes. It's just explaining things as they are and honestly and truthfully. Then another part that was left out, misleading secrecy has given the death blow to numerous organizations.
You can see why.
Misleading secrecy has given the death blow to numerous organizations. They very much had a veneration of the Mahatmas within their secret inner organization. And they really emphasized this devotion. It was more of a bhakti yoga type of thing, to revere and almost pray to the Mahatmas. We wouldn't call it a prayer, but to really try to make a communication through your devotion.
Oh, this is where this sentence comes from. The cant about masters.
Yes.
Okay. And then it continues. The cant about masters must be silently but firmly put down.
So cant is sort of a slogan or emphasis. Your emphasis on the masters has to be put down. It has to be more about the pupil, about self-transformation. What does the pupil do? Instead of relying on the master to bring you along. He can't do that.
Let the devotion and service be to that supreme spirit alone of which each one is a part. Namelessly and silently we work, and the continual references to ourselves and the repetition of our names raises up a confused aura that hinders our work. We've heard this multiple times now about how we bother them.
We even are reluctant to say too much about the Mahatmas, but at this distance of time, I think that it is okay to mention them more, but only in the fact that that's who we emulate, not that we're propitiating or asking favors, praying to them practically as saints. Please help me, please help me. That isn't how it works. Help yourself. Follow their example. And then here's another thing that was cut out. You will have to leave aside a good deal of your emotions and credulity before you become a safe guide among the influences that will commence to work in the new cycle. And what that new cycle is, I don't know for sure, but it was 1900, so maybe it's a 100-year cycle. Then continue.
The TS was meant to be the cornerstone of the future religions of humanity. To accomplish this object, those who lead must leave aside their weak predilections for the forms and ceremonies of any particular creed and show themselves to be true theosophists both in inner thought and outward observance. The greatest of your trials is yet to come. We are watching over you, but you must put forth all your strength. KH.
Wow.
Dang.
Now, I want to say something in defense of Annie Besant. Annie Besant is, I'm convinced, going to be a Mahatma one day, and not in the far distant future, but relatively soon. And the reason is she is one person who has tremendous love for humanity. Her early years, once she got away from the Anglican Church, and she was married to an Anglican priest. Once she got away from that, she became a spokesperson for poor people, working class people, for women and children. She instituted or was a major influence in instituting public education, free public education for the children, poor children, who otherwise had no opportunities for education. She did a tremendous amount of work for the underprivileged people. She was instrumental in getting better working conditions for factory workers who worked 6 days a week and would go to start working as young as 8 years old. And she specifically helped organize a strike of the match workers in London, because these poor people, and they were poor, and many of them were children, were exposed to dangerous chemicals. They were working 60, 70 hours a week, and they died early. Their teeth would fall out from the effects of these chemicals they worked with. Their health suffered drastically, and she went to bat for them. So Annie Besant is someone that, for whom I have a lot of respect. Yes, she has some faults. Yes, she has some things she still has to work on. I assume, I don't know, maybe she has resolved this in the meantime. I would have no problem at all working with her, or any of the other chelas or chelas on probation. I will certainly support them in their own work, and hopefully they will support us in our work. We can all work together. None of us have achieved it yet. I haven't. So we're all on the same page. We're all still trying to eliminate our ego, our pride, our love of power, all of these things that have to be gotten rid of before we can progress.
At the time of this letter, was Leadbeater a prominent figure at this time as well?
He was just becoming. He had been in Sri Lanka until just 18 months before HPB died, and he was anxious to get away from there. Sinnett finally gave him the money so that he could move back to London to tutor his young son, and he brought with him C. Rajadasa, who was, I believe, 15 years old, and they lived with Sinnett, and Leadbeater was their tutor. At the same time, he had developed some clairvoyant abilities while he was in Sri Lanka, and we'll find out a little more about this later, was one of the psychics that Sinnett used to communicate with the Mahatmas. He used others as well. We will find out. But Leadbeater only visited HPB twice that we're aware of. So even though HPB had an esoteric school and students, he and Sinnett were not part of that. They stayed away.
Sinnett was not part of the ES?
No. He had, we'll find out.
Okay.
but he had pulled away, and he had his own group. They had the London Lodge, and then the followers of HPB established the Blavatsky Lodge, and the Blavatsky Lodge had no problem with any of the others, but the members of the London Lodge avoided contamination or interactions with the other ones. There were a few members that kind of went back and forth, but they kind of got in trouble for that.
Interesting.
Now we're going to do a follow-up on our last video. But before we do that, I need to set the stage. So we've got a couple of statements by theosophists who have met some of the Mahatmas, apparently physically or maybe astrally, we don't know. But two theosophists are going to testify that they know of the existence of the masters. This first one was an article published in the Theosophist in August 1881. So just a couple of months before KH went on his retreat, Samadhi. And this is titled The Occult World and the Spiritualist. And I think spiritualist, they're referring to the magazine. So from the Theosophist, August 1881.
Having just read in the London Spiritualist a review of Mr. Sinnett's The Occult World, I find in it more than a doubt expressed as to the reality of the Brothers, that body of mystics to which the personage known as Kuthumi Lal Singh belongs. The editor of that paper would have his readers believe that the said person is a creation of Madame Blavatsky's fancy, or that would be fantasy or imagination.
Fantasy,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sinnett, he says, has never seen Kuthumi, nor does he mention that any other theosophist in India has had that privilege.
Now, Mr. Sinnett has not seen Kuthumi, but he's going to say there are theosophists who have.
As some other persons may express the same doubts, and also some, while admitting their genuine character, may attribute them to agency other than that to which Madame Blavatsky refers them. I hereby declare that not only have I within the last few days seen one of the persons so designated at the headquarters of the Society at Bombay, but that I have very good reasons, which I cannot go into more fully now, to know that the said persons are not spirits, but real human beings exercising powers out of the ordinary. Both before and after my connection with the Theosophical Society.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I have known and conversed with them personally and witnessed the most wonderful results, which would ordinarily be described as miraculous. But I must emphasize my declaration that I do not regard them as supernatural and am altogether materialistic in my conceptions of the agency producing them. Further, I testify that I have the strongest conviction based on reasons which, though authoritative, are purely natural and physical, that the said brothers are a mysterious fraternity, the ordinary location of which is the regions north of the Himalayas.
And this is signed by Mirza Moorad Ali Beg, FTS, Fellow of the Theosophical Society. So they often refer to themselves as fellows, the members of the Theosophical Society.
So this person is claiming to have
conversed and seen them
before
and after his connection with the Theosophical Society. That's what I'm saying is really interesting, before and after. And he was the acting president of the Saurashtra Theosophical Society at Bhavnagar. And Bhavnagar is a city in India. If you took a boat directly north from Bombay, you could arrive at Bhavnagar on the Arabian Sea.
He doesn't specifically say that he's seen them, though.
What?
He
well,
says
let's see.
conversed
Okay,
and
conversed.
known.
And known. Okay, that's an important.
It could be in person, but it doesn't say
and
that.
it may be in visions.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one testimony. Now let's hear from another theosophist.
By this point, has Sinnett even convened with any with KH astrally? Even there were a couple times when KH tried to appear to him, but
and he saw him for a moment.
Yeah.
So it's been not completely successful.
sure, but certainly not in the physical plane.
No. He missed that opportunity apparently in January.
without it being specified what he missed, but
Right.
he missed. Oh man. Is there anything leading up?
Just go ahead and read it.
Okay. The criticisms upon Mr. Sinnett's book, The Occult World, force upon me the duty of testifying from personal experience and knowledge to the fact that those whom we call our brothers of the first section, of whom Kuthumi Lal Singh is one, and who possess the so-called miraculous powers, are real and living beings and not disembodied spirits, as the editor of the Spiritualists would have his readers think.
So the spiritualists are claiming that these brothers are no better than the spirits that we communicate with. They're the same. You guys have nothing better than what we've got.
It is but by a long course of study and training that such can be attained. It is not belief with me, but knowledge. For if I have seen one of them, I have at least seen about half a dozen on various occasions, in broad daylight, in open spaces, and have talked to them. Not only when Madame Blavatsky was in Bombay, but even when she was far away and I here. I have also seen them at times when I was traveling. I was taken to the residences of some of them, and once when Colonel Olcott and Madame Blavatsky were with me. Further than that I cannot say, and shall not give any more information either about them or the places they reside in, for I am under a solemn obligation of secrecy, and the subject is too sacred for me to be trifled with. I may, however, mention that I know Kuthumi Lal Singh personally, and have seen and conversed with him when Madame Blavatsky was here, as also when she was far away, but under what circumstances I am not at liberty to disclose. So those circumstances might be psychically or astrally.
Right. And because he is obviously a chela, there are certain things that he's not allowed to talk about.
We Hindus who know the brothers think it equally absurd and ridiculous to insinuate that either Madame Blavatsky is a lunatic or an impostor, or that persons like Mr. Sinnett could have ever become her dupes. Neither is she a medium, nor are the brothers disembodied spirits. Oh, this is Damodar. Nice.
Damodar K. Mahavallankar, FTS. And he was
Nice.
living at the headquarters in Bombay with Blavatsky and Olcott. So he was with them constantly, but he also said he has seen them at times when he was far away from them.
Now, why were these testimonies being procured at this time? Are they in defense at this point?
Right.
They're
Right,
okay.
because remember the spiritualists and the Christians and the scientists are all up in arms against the theosophists.
So
And
they're
so
in a
they're
state of
having to
conflict.
defend themselves. And these are two people who said, I know personally that they do exist. These are not spirit guides like the spiritualists believe in.
These are actual people that are.
These
have
are
those.
actual people. Now, are you ready for the rest of the story?
Heck yeah, give it to us.
Do you have your seatbelt fastened?
Ooh, I better strap in.
You are strapped in?
I better strap
Okay.
in. Put my
And
helmet.
you don't have any... Well, it's a
Protective.
good thing you're not wearing socks, because otherwise they might get knocked off.
Knock your sock. I should put some protective gear on, though.
You
perhaps.
probably should. All right. Now we're going to read another article that was published in February of 1884. And this, again, is, I believe it was Damodar, but I believe it was. I will double check and find out.
We jumped way ahead for that last letter in time. We jumped to 1900. Now we're going back to the sequence of events.
Right. And the reason we covered the 1900 letter was because it emphasized the requirements for a chela. Mm-hmm. This is a chela who was on the verge of failing. And he said, you really need to work hard on these.
And now we're back to our sequence.
Now we're back to our normal time travel.
Is this an article titled White and Black Magic?
Yes, and this was in a supplement to the Theosophist, February 1884.
The first time that Mirza Moorad Ali came to the headquarters of the Theosophical Society in Bombay to stop with us a few days, the very first thing he told me was, if you ever want to progress on the right path, beware of sensual appetites dragging you down, and above all, take care of the brothers of the shadow, the sorcerers, with some of whom I have had personal dealings.
Now, and this is Damodar, definitely. And who is Mirza Moorad Ali?
The president of that chapter.
Exactly. So,
Saurashtra.
Yes, the same person that we heard from before who said he had personal communications with him. Now go ahead.
The sorcerers with some of whom I have had personal dealings, to which fact I trace all my present suffering, struggle, and misery. Oh no. Huh. These are not his exact words, but this is the idea he conveyed to me and confirmed in all his subsequent conversations. I therefore stand aghast now at reading. The Theosophist leaders never discouraged, but rather encouraged me in such practices of black magic.
So this Mirza Moorad Ali Beg is now saying that the founders of the Theosophical Society encouraged him to practice black magic.
Why is he saying that?
Well, let's find out.
As Mirza Moorad Ali says in his letter under consideration, I cannot believe he is willfully misrepresenting facts, but I will feign willingly.
And that means willingly.
Oh, okay. But will willingly attribute his present forgetfulness to mental aberration caused by nervous exhaustion brought on by his futile struggle to get over the horrors of black magic and rise up to the spiritual glories of an adept.
So this is, keep reading.
When he joined us, he had already opened the door and was gone too far to be able to shut it against the workings of the sorcerers with whom he had had personal dealings. I only pity his fall and hope he will not have to share the fate of all black magicians. He is misrepresenting the meaning of nirvana when he uses it as a synonym for annihilation. Yes, it is annihilation, not of the spiritual ego, but of the lower principles in man, of the animal soul, the personality which must perish.
And this is what we emphasized before. It isn't annihilation in the sense that we're going to die. Our personality is going to die, and it dies numerous times. It's the spiritual essence that never dies.
The powers of black magic are due to the willpower engendered by a concentrated form of selfishness. Wow. Let's hear that again. The powers of black magic are due to the willpower engendered by a concentrated form of selfishness.
And it's entirely selfishness.
Wow.
It's good versus evil.
That's what black magic is. It's a concentrated form of selfishness.
And it may be gray magic, meaning that you're somewhere in between. But if it's not white magic, then it is not of the hierarchy or the Mahatmas.
This is possible only when the manas, the fifth principle of man or mind, as the occultist calls it, resides very firmly in his lower principles.
All right, so the manas, being the higher mind, can go either way. it can either be focused entirely on the personality, or it can throw in with Atma and Buddhi and form the Atma Buddhi Manas, the triad, instead of the quaternary. So that's the pivot point.
That's why sometimes we we subdivide manas into two sections, the one that is lower in nature and the one that is higher. Of course, the greater the powers of a black magician, the greater must be his selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
The energy of cohesion being thus very powerful, it must take a very long period before annihilation is complete.
Aha. Now, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Let's read that last one again. Of course, the greater the powers of a black magician, the greater must be his selfishness. The energy of cohesion being thus very powerful, it must take a very long period before annihilation is complete. For aught we know, it, not his physical body, which cannot live so long, may extend over thousands, nay, 1,000,000 of years.
Aha. Aha. So that means that when someone talks about losing your soul or selling your soul, this is what is referred to.
Wow.
So in the case of the black magician, even though the physical body will die, the rest of that personality has so much energy wrapped up in it that it could live, according to this, and this is Damodar, as much as 1,000,000 years.
Wow. And there's still a vague awareness that we maintain. It's not like you aren't aware of what's going on.
And how do they operate? By influencing people who do have a physical body.
Mm-hmm. Those are some of the spirits that are being contacted by the spiritualists.
Some of them, yes,
Some.
absolutely.
The tendency for evil is there. The desire for mischief is strong. But there are no means for the gratification of sensual appetites, which is what Terry just said. If you don't have a physical body, you can't do anything about it. You can just attach yourself to other people's energy, basically.
Yeah, you can influence people who are vulnerable and who have similar characteristics in their own personalities.
Mm-hmm. There are no means for the gratification of sensual appetites, and the miserable being suffers the throes of dissolution for a very, very long period until he is totally annihilated.
Yeah. So that's the fate of a black magician.
He uses the word totally, though. I mean, it's not.
It will die.
The soul? I mean,
the lower soul, the spiritual part, will go back into the divine soup, as you say. But this personality that he was so attached to, after it lives as much as 1,000,000 years, is finally going to die, and that'll be the end of it.
So that soul's journey is done?
That fifth principle, the fifth principle dies with the personality, whereas normally it would continue on with the higher principles.
Yeah.
That's what is meant by losing your soul.
So that soul's journey through evolution is
Ends.
done.
Yes.
So it's not a ripped out page, it's a ripped out soul. Like
Yes.
This is a new concept.
That's a different thing.
Wow.
We'll talk about that in a different session.
So this is a big deal then. This is like you're evolving, but then you are...
The Mahatmas don't even like to talk about this. It's
my gosh.
It's very rare, fortunately, and they don't like to talk about it, but we still need to know about it.
While on the other hand, the white magician, by his training, as described in the Elixir of Life, gradually kills his lower principles without any suffering, thus extending over a long period their dissolution. And his manas identifies itself with his higher, the sixth and seventh principles.
So this is the aspirant, the chela who succeeds.
And they're referred to as white magicians. I love that. Every tyro or beginner in occultism knows that the sixth principle, being but the vehicle of the seventh, which is all-pervading, eternal essence, must be permanent.
Yeah, so the Atma Buddhi Manas is the natural. That's what we want. When the higher Manas throws in with the personality, you get a black magician.
Wow. It is therefore amusing to see how Mirza Moorad Ali Beg has endeavored to represent black as white and vice versa. But his sophistry will be plain to every student of the occult philosophy.
Isn't it interesting that people on the side of evil always claim that they're the good guys? They recognize that it should be embarrassing to admit that you're on the side of evil. So they, oh no,
Right.
we're the good guys.
And sometimes they believe that, actually. Sometimes.
At some level, you can fool yourself if you want to.
Yeah.
We've said before, people who lie all the time, at some point they start believing their own lies.
Wow.
But in the beginning, they knew it was a lie, and in the end, they end up totally confused and believing that it is true. All right, so there you go. Now,
And so that was published also.
that was published also. Now, let's read one more thing.
But I still don't know why Mirza defended the TS and the brothers, and then he turned around and...
Well, let's see if we can figure it out.
Oh, there's more.
There's more.
Okay.
All right. This is from Old Diary Leaves by Olcott, second volume, and it starts on page 289. I've got a copy here for you to read. So everything that is in yellow, you're going to read.
Okay. Shall we?
Yeah, go ahead.
The writer of that since well-known treatise, The Elixir of Life, a Mr. Mirza Moorad Ali Beg, came to us on 20th January for the first time. So, understanding the context here, you said it's from Old Diary Leaves, and this is written by Olcott.
Mm-hmm.
And so Olcott is saying Mirza came to them, meaning Olcott and
So,
HPB.
yeah, the first time they knew of him was on the 20th of January, 1881.
Okay. That's in the earlier days of the sixth year of the TS. Okay. He was of European birth, a scion of the old Hampshire family of the Mitfords, which has produced several noted writers. This young man's grandfather had come out to India with some Frenchmen and served under Tipu Sultan. When that cruel and sensual chieftain was killed, Mr. Mitford took service with the East India Company. His grandson was born at Madras, and among other eccentricities turned Muslim. Did I say that right?
Well, they used to say Musulman, which is from French, but Muslim.
Musulman. And when we met him, was in the military employ of the Maharaj of Bhavnagar as chief cavalry officer, practically a sinecure.
A sinecure is a cushy job where you do very little and get paid very well.
Okay. His had been a wild, adventurous life, more full of misery than the opposite. He had dabbled in black magic, among other things, and he's dabbled in black magic, interesting, and told me that all the sufferings he had passed through within the preceding few years were directly traceable to the malign persecutions of certain evil powers, which he had summoned to help him get into his power a virtuous lady whom he coveted. Oh, dude. Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really, Mirza? Really, dude?
Mm-hmm.
He had sat under the instructions of a Muslim black magician guru in a closed room for 40 days, with his gaze fixed upon a black spot on the wall, in which he was told to imagine the face of his intended victim.
40 days he spent on this.
And he's calling the woman a victim.
Well, she is a victim.
I know,
she had no interest in this man.
Yeah. And repeating some 100,000 times a prescribed mantra in half Arabic, half Sanskrit. Oh my gosh. Wow. So this is an example of a black magic ritual.
Yes.
He was to continue this until he should actually see the lady's face as if alive. And when her lips moved as if to speak, she would have been completely fascinated and would come to him of her own accord. All this happened as foretold. His nefarious object was gained, the woman ruined, oh my gosh, and he himself fell under the power of the bad spirits whom he had not the moral strength to dominate after having accepted their compulsory service.
So this is how black magicians,
Enslaved people.
yeah, they use them
Yeah.
as their physical body to gratify their desires. It was the black magician that provided the energy to make this happen. Yeah, that's how black magic works.
He may have had a body though, right? We don't know if this guru.
Possibly, but
Yeah.
possibly not too.
Certainly he was a distressful person to be with, nervous, excitable, fixed on nothing, the slave of his caprices.
Now he's talking about Mirza Moorad Ali Beg.
Seeing the higher possibilities of man's nature, yet unable to reach them, he came to us as to a refuge, and shortly after took up his residence in our house for a few weeks. Now, this is obviously before he became president of that section.
Yes. So, yes, that is correct.
What?
Mm-hmm.
How did Olcott and how did they not?
Well, keep reading.
Okay. A strange-looking creature for an Englishman he was. His dress was that of a Muslim throughout, save that he had his long, light brown hair tied up in a Grecian knot behind his head like a woman. His complexion was fair and his eyes light blue. The writing of the Elixir of Life occurred some time later, but I may as well tell the story while he is under my mind's eye. Now, is Olcott just telling some history here? Is that what he's doing in Old Diary Leaves? He's just recounting?
Yes.
Okay, my goodness.
So, have you made the connection yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm seeing that there's a
Mirza Moorad Ali Beg
Yeah, and he did black magic.
is Mr. Mitford, the one who wrote Elixir of Life.
Oh, because he comes from the Mitford family.
Yes.
Okay, weird.
But here we thought he was giving us really good information, and he was. His information in Elixir of Life is really good information. But his life says he knew that and yet chose a different path.
Yeah.
Keep reading.
Wow. From the time that he came to us, he seemed to be engaged in a strong mental and moral conflict within himself. He complained of being dragged hither and thither, first by good, then by bad influences. There you go. That's why it's... Wow.
So dabbling in black magic is extremely dangerous.
He's been ruined. My goodness.
Yes.
He had a fine mind and had done a good deal of reading. He wanted to join our society, but as I had no confidence in his moral stamina, I refused him. HPB, however, offering to become responsible for him, I relented and let her take him in. She had to have known this, though. She had to have known.
Well, she's in communication more with the Mahatmas than Olcott was, and she may have been told to do that.
Wow.
And they were trying to save him. The Mahatmas were, obviously.
Yes. Wow. He repaid her nicely some months later by snatching a sword from a sepoy at Wadwan station and trying to kill her, crying out that she and her Mahatmas were all devils. In short, he went mad. But to return. While with us, he wrote some articles which were printed in the Theosophists, and one evening after a talk with us, sat himself down to write on the power of the will to affect longevity.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was the letter.
That was
the Elixir of
article.
Life.
Yes. While he was living with Olcott and HPV.
Oh my gosh. HPB and I remained in the room, and when he began his writing, she went and stood behind him, just as she had in New York when Haris was making his sketch of one of the masters, under her thought transference.
And this was another psychic that was also artistic, and he was drawing a representation, a drawing of one of the Mahatmas as described to him, but then HPB stood next to him, and apparently Moria also was there astrally, influencing him to make it as accurate as possible.
So when he was writing the Elixir of Life, she was doing the same thing. She was
Yes.
behind him.
And remember, KH implied that he was also involved in writing it, so that she was the connection.
Wow, my goodness. Wow. The article of Mirza Sahib attracted deserved attention on its appearance and has ever since ranked as one of the most suggestive and valuable pamphlets in our theosophical literature. So they gave him a chance. They helped him write this.
Yeah. They're really patient, trying to help people. The amount of effort they put into trying to save one single person is amazing.
Knowing that he had been doing black magic.
Yeah.
Our theosophist friends need to know this.
They can watch our video.
Good job, St. You rock. You're smart.
You have to be careful. Sometimes I actually think.
Wow, these books are doing something, aren't they?
Yes, I read and ponder and meditate on them. Yes, I do.
What the? Okay. Oh my gosh. He was doing well, and there was a good chance for him to retrieve much of his lost spirituality if he would only stop with us. But after giving his promise to do so, he obeyed an irresistible impulse and rushed back to Wadwan and to destruction. His mind did not recover its equilibrium. Oh no. He turned Roman Catholic, then recanted back into Islam, and finally died, and was buried at Junagadh, where I have seen his humble tomb. His case has always seemed to me a dreadful instance of the danger one runs in dabbling with occult science while the animal passions are rampant. But he was the president of a TS Lodge during some of this time.
Yes.
My goodness. Wow. Wow.
I've had people, one in particular that contacted me a couple of years ago, and this person was asking for help kind of in the same way. They had done a spell against a coworker. They wanted revenge for something which was never specified, and conjured up some kind of a spirit that then they weren't able to get rid of. And I spent a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, communicating and trying to teach that person as much as I could about what we know and trying to get them on the right path. And I figured at that point they had enough information that they were either going to make it work or not. And it was important for me to kind of distance myself from that energy. So I gave it a good shot to educate them and encourage them and bless them and sent them on their way. Yeah,
I hope they were able to solve it.
I don't know, and I can't be attached to the outcome. Mm-hmm. They are the only ones who can do it, and they had the information to do it. So it's to say, even the Mahatmas tried in this case. If, with the help of KH, you're not able to succeed, then I don't think there is any chance of success. And the surest way to make sure that you don't fall into this is to develop pure love of humanity. We've said it so many times. You can achieve nirvana without this pure love of humanity, but the journey is more dangerous if you don't have that. So if you have even a bit of kindness, compassion for other people, work on that. Turn that into unconditional love for all of humanity. If you're able to do that, your success is almost guaranteed. I can't imagine that you would not succeed eventually if you have developed unconditional love for humanity.
Wow.
Well, there you have it. A very sad example, and it's not sad, it's unfortunate that that individual didn't seem to have the strength and the wherewithal to extract themselves. But let's take a look, too, at what he did. He basically destroyed a woman's life. In some way, even though he couldn't be prosecuted for it, it was rape. But since it wasn't by physical force and instead was by psychic force,
It's hard. You can't
there's
prove
no
that.
court that's going to convict him on it. But karma knows.
Karma knows.
And
His aura knows.
he could possibly recover from that, live out the karma, and continue. And maybe he did. We hope he did. But one more warning to us. And keep in mind, too, that when you raise your hand and say you want to be tested, it's going to bring out the best in you, but it will also bring out the worst in you. That is part of the testing process. And the more energy that comes to you, either by your own efforts or from this effort of the Mahatma to help you, it can be used in any way you choose to. So if you still have some of these negative qualities in you, you may choose to use them to achieve those goals, to become more powerful, to subject other people to your will. It's up to you. So purification, you cannot get away from it. So if you think you're going to be the exception, like Hume thought, that, oh, no, we don't need any of that. By my great knowledge and intellect, I can make it happen. That's not true. Purification has to happen. Now, what did you want to share?
The question that I would have if I was watching, and Terry and I always want to make our information relatable and practical, and maybe some would think, oh, this discussion of black magic is not practical, but it actually is. It is practical. It is more practical than you probably thought, because anytime that we're selfish, that's a little bit of black magic, because we're powerful people. If we do any kind of meditation practice or pranayama practices where we build energy, and if we have the ability to be influential in any sense, whether it's in your job or in your family or in your life, you have power to use to influence people. So if you're selfish in any sense, you're using your power for less than white, darker than white magic. It might be a little bit of gray. How many are there shades? There are 50, aren't there? Not 50 shades of gray.
There are 5 million shades.
Right. Only you decide what is purest and what is blackest of black magic. But it is very real. It's very practical. And being in the yoga world, I reference that a lot, since I spend a lot of my time teaching in yoga studios and traveling to yoga trainings, and some more esoteric than others. And I see rituals being done. I see people who come out weird from certain things. I really do. And Terry has other examples that we've shared a few, but we know people who have done intense strange pranayama techniques, too much of them, and they end up a little bit weird, a little bit strange, and they're ripping away some veils and they're changing something. This can be considered black magic, and it's not too far out there. It is very real. So this discussion is a very real cautionary tale that we can get caught up in. The allure of getting what you want through magic is like, it's a big allure, and we have to be very, very, very careful that manifesting things for the wrong reasons is dangerous. Manifesting things is a real thing, and if we do it for the right reasons to help humanity, that's the way to manifest. To manifest a woman to fall in love with you just because you can't live without her,
Well,
that's the wrong reason.
It wasn't unconditional love he was looking for either. It was...
Think about how strong that must have been, too. He sat for 40 days. He gave up 40 days of his life.
To ruin this woman's life?
Wow. So
if you want to become a chela, the purification has to be complete. You are most useful when there is absolutely nothing in you that causes disturbance or deviation from purity. Purity in thought, emotions. There should be almost no emotions, and any emotions you have should be for kindness or empathy or sympathy with people. But even those need to be kept down to a minimum. Put yourself as much as possible into what you would imagine the style that the Mahatmas live in. This sense of bliss, of equanimity, of wonder, this childlike wonder of nature and life itself. If you can live that 90% of the time, or hopefully eventually 100%, your chances of success are guaranteed. You're absolutely exactly what they're looking for.
Get the bumper sticker WWJD. What would Jesus do? But change the J to what would KH do, and live like that. Live like they would live. Respond to the situations as they would, as best we can.
And KH literally is the epitome of kindness, unselfishness, and that's why he's going to become a Buddha. He has the qualities. He loves humanity and is willing to sacrifice anything to help them, to help us. All right.
Good job. That was amazing.
And yes, everything has its place. We may not like to deal with some of these subjects, but we have to, because the Mahatmas have to deal with it. And they have no hatred at all for these people. Remember, KH went to visit one of the monasteries that is hosting the Dugpas, the brothers of the left-hand path. These are black magicians. So he went to the camp of the enemy. They are brothers. They still love them because they're part of humanity. They're fulfilling a different role from what the Mahatmas are filling. We want to be on the side of good, on the side of nature, and that's how we do it. All right. We'll see you again next time in session number 31. It will be a lot more upbeat. This is okay too. But we're going to keep getting exciting stuff and interesting stuff. All good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us.